And I found out that Agile actually has a manifesto. Like, okay. Hi everyone, Shawnee here. So thank you again for stopping by to see what I am up to this week. If you didn't check out my video from last week, I shared an experiment that I did that was inspired by the book 1 Million Followers. And I kind of discussed what I learned from it, how I changed a couple of things with my Twitter posts, and what happened. So if you want to check that out, go ahead and click over here. So yeah, it's quite interesting. So this week, as you know, probably from my prior video, that I am now focusing on just coding my application. I have already written up a prototype of some of the main functions and getting that up and running. So now it's just finishing up, making it look pretty, adding some things like in-app purchases and stuff like that. So I've been working on that. Anyway, so let me tell you what happened beginning of this week. I began to go over everything that I need to do, everything I need to learn, and I found out that looking at my bullet journal, now I shared my bullet journal before, and it tends to be really clean and concise and everything has its place. But the last week and a half has been crazy in the sense that I need to focus on building the Android part as well. So I need to learn how to build apps for Android. And so I was like researching some things, and I found a couple things that I want to do. Like I need to take a course. Well, I'm going to take a course that happens to be free, but there's a time limit to when you have to finish it. So I basically have until the end of the month to get it done. So I added that to my plate and started researching some of that and doing some of the, watching some of the videos and playing around with Android Studio. I downloaded it and started messing around with it now. So I found out that just using my bullet journal alone is it's becoming a little bit unorganized. And right now I have a lot of balls up in the air with marketing the app, with keeping up with these YouTube videos, learning marketing, and then also coding, and then learning how to develop for Android too. So I was like, okay, I need to figure something out. I was watching a video, well, let me back up. So typically when I code, all right, and I don't know if this is for you, but when I code and I really don't have to like figure something out, where it's just like I'm either refactoring something or I am building something or I'm testing something, I typically don't need to like focus directly on and have my office be like a library or anything. I typically have something in the background, either music playing or I have something that I'm watching on Netflix or something on my iPad. So I kind of multitask in that sense. And lately I've been watching a show called Silicon Valley, which kind of inspires me when I code because it's like, I'm kind of like them, There was this one episode where the guys needed a better way of managing what needed to be built for Pied Piper or whatever. And Jared had mentioned to the guys, hey, we should use Scrum. Now, Jared is one of the characters that is kind of like the operations dude. And so he's technically like the Scrum master. And so he took all the parts and pieces that needed to be built and put them into columns on a board, and the guys would take these Post-its and do the code and stuff like that. And I was like really inspired by that. I'm like, okay, what is this Scrum thing? And so I decided to dive into it. And I realized that Scrum is actually Agile software development. And I'm like, hey, that might work for me. So I started researching it, and I discovered that Agile has basically two flavors. One is Scrum, which was in the series or in the show, and the other one is Kanban. And I didn't know about Kanban. I've heard of Scrum before. Anyway, so these two are the most widely used Agile frameworks. It basically helps teams to adhere to Agile principles and basically just to get done, really. That's basically the whole idea, is to help you build better products or services without all the headaches and stuff like that. All right, so I found out that Agile is basically a disciplined project management process. Now, it's mainly used in software development, but as I dove into YouTube, I discovered that a lot of people use it. And it's not just for software development. Actually, small business owners use it. People use it to organize like their life in general. Take a look. Just dive in there, look at some YouTube videos, and I was like surprised. Agile encourages frequent inspection and adaptation, self-organization, and accountability. So basically, it's just a set of best practices intended to allow for the rapid delivery of high-quality software. And I'm only going to speak in regards to Agile for software development or app development. Because like I said, you can look at YouTube videos how other people use it for achieving their goals or, objectives or whatever. So I was like, okay, this approach is actually something that I could use. And I found out that Agile actually has a manifesto. Okay, you can read it. It's actually kind of interesting. I'll have a link down below. Because I wanted to use this, I had to figure out what the difference between Scrum and Kanban was. Now, when I was reading an article about it, there really isn't a hard fast rule about which one is better than the other. It really depends on what you need it to do, or how do you plan on implementing it, depending on how big your team is, or if you are a one-man show, or if you are working with multiple teams. It all depends on what your needs are at the time, so it's really flexible. And in some instances, there's some companies that use a combination of the two. So there's really no hard, fast rule about which one's better than the other. It all depends on if the shoe fits, basically. So the difference between Scrum and Kanban is that Scrum is a structured Agile approach. So basically there is a Scrum Master or a project manager that works with all the teams, or if it's a huge team, it's a huge team. So basically just large groups or large teams or a collection of teams will find Scrum much more, better suited for them. Whereas Kanban is an unstructured Agile approach. So it's great for small teams or one-man shows like myself. I was like, okay, great. So I'm going to be using Kanban to help me track the progression of my work, to keep all of the things that I need to do, especially deadlines, in the forefront, and also will allow me to really focus on those big parts of the app that I need to do, and then all the subtasks that come after it. And the thing about Kanban that I actually am beginning to actually enjoy is that it allows me to visualize my work. So even if I only touch 2 subtasks in my main card, I feel like I've done some work towards completing that goal. Another thing I like about Kanban is that there's really only 2 key metrics that you need to worry about, and that's lead time and cycle time. And the reason why I like those is because it allows, basically it limits you on how many work in progress items you have. So for me, that's really important because I tend to overload myself with tasks. I think I can complete 3 or 4 tasks in a day, and I realize I can only touch 1 or 2. So that will stop me from doing that. That is actually a good thing, is that it will allow me just to really focus on completing what I can and within the time limit I set myself. And another thing that it will do is that it will continuously improve your workflow and or delivery, which is important because because it's so visual, you can be able to tell if something needs to be changed about how you're approaching the problem, or maybe that item needs to be broken down into two, because if you're not delivering, then there's something obviously stopping you from delivering, right? Another thing that I like is, of course, there are no roles. So it's an unstructured system, so there's really only me. But this also is great for small teams. Like if you only have like 5 members in your team, it basically leads to more collaboration because everyone's responsible for these items. So I kind of like that as well. Another thing that I like about Kanban, because that I am working on this app, there's a lot of things I'm learning, a lot of things that I know I'm going to have to change. Kanban allows the ability to change anything at any time, so it's really flexible, which is like, yeah. So Kanban basically has 2 things. It has a board and cards. So the board is basically just a board. Most people do use an actual board, like a board you stick on a wall. I'm using the virtual board. I'm actually using an app that's called Trello. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And it took me at least a couple days to kind of figure it out once I started working with it, and it might even change. So there's really no hard, fast rules. It's just you need different stages to, track, I guess. Yeah. So Kanban board is broken down into columns, and each column is a particular stage of the process. All right, and then the other component is that the visual signals are basically cards. So it basically has a title, it has a description, and then if there are subtasks, you can have a checklist to list those subtasks that you need to do to complete the card. Now that's what I did. I know there's some people on the interwebs that have post-its that only list what the card is, but they have no subtasks under it. And so I guess you could do it any other way. I mean, any way you want, I suppose, but that's how I'm doing it. Other thing that the board has is a commitment point and a delivery point. So once you move a card over to your in progress, or you're working on it, that is a commitment to finish that card. And it has to go through all the stages to delivery. Whatever that delivery might be determines, what this project that you're doing or what you're doing this for is going to, what the end result is. All right, so the Kanban card. Now some companies use the Kanban card as a ticket, and I didn't realize this, but apparently my current job, that's what we use Kanban for, is our tickets. So if there's any issues and any bugs we have to fix, we actually use a Kanban board in order to track the bugs. And from generation to tested, done, and pushed to alpha. So I was like, oh, okay. Apparently I've been doing Kanban for a while and didn't know it. So basically that card contains a single work item. And there's only one card, one work item per card. You can't have multiple. So in my case, what I'm going to be using it for is there's going to be one card, at least for the development part, one card per user story. So I mentioned user stories in the frame of marketing in a prior video. This time though, I'm going to be using my user story in order to guide the implementation of the features of my app. And if that particular work item does not fit the user story, it gets kicked out, it gets thrown away. So that's what I'm using it for, and I'll discuss a little bit about user story and that setup in a moment. All right, so the Kanban card also helps to easily detect inefficiencies, and that's what I also discovered when I first set up my Kanban cards on Monday. I realized by Wednesday there was a couple that I needed to tweak. There was basically 2 that I combined into one, and there was one that I broke out because I have a deadline. I need to be aware of that deadline, so I broke it out and made them sub cards, just so in my view, because literally I have to finish. Basically, there are 2 courses I'm taking that I have to finish by the end of the month. So I want those cards, those sub cards I'm calling them, in my face so I get it done. But basically, those 2 cards are actually on another card that has to do with Android development. So I have to learn it too. So I have to finish it in order to move that Android card up, basically. Now that might be the un-Kanban way. I don't know, don't care, but I have to do it. So basically, the user story, you basically have one work item or one feature or something that you're implementing for your app. And the way that I use the user stories is basically user stories for Kanban are often expressed in a simple sentence, and it has a structure. So the structure is persona, need, and purpose. So basically, you're always thinking about the user and how that item applies to them. So basically, the sentence is structured as a persona. I want to do something as the persona so that I achieve some type of goal. So for example, say you're building a to-do app, and that to-do app should allow the user to organize their to-do list. So one way to write that user story for the list movement, like moving the items up and down, would be, as Sammy, I want to organize my work so I can feel more in control. So that is the user story for that feature. And I like that aspect of the card, is that it really connects me to why I'm building that particular feature, or also if I write a work item and I can't build a user story for it, it's immediate validation that obviously I've gone off the wrong track. Like I'm off the rails. You need to get back on. So that's really awesome. So basically, user stories describe the why and the what behind the day-to-day work of your development. And I love that. And actually, now that I'm actually working on some of my cards, I feel like, okay, every time I open up the card, I see in the description, which is the very top, right under the title, my user story. So it really keeps that in the forefront, so I know why I'm building it, even if I'm having struggles with coding something or figuring something out. I always look at my user story, and it's kind of is inspiring. Gives you motivation to finish, right? So basically, it's really understanding the role of your user as the source of truth for whatever you are delivering. But it's also why. It is the key to a smooth process. So when I found that out, I was like, okay, great. So how am I going to be implementing Kanban? So I found another YouTube video that I was actually inspired by, and the lady was doing like a 90-day plan for her business. I'm actually going to do a 90-day sprint. So in my sprint, I have outlined 3 goals and wrote them out, and they have a measurable outcome as well as a deadline. So the deadline for one of my goals is actually at the end of this month. The other 2 are at the end of June. And then I'm going to be using Kanban as a more direct way to basically attack this 90-day sprint. And so it's making me set my priorities, which is super important. So that's what I have been doing. So I will probably do another video about the end of my 90-day sprint, because I think this is going to work. I already feel way more organized. Like I have direction. I know what I'm focusing on. I don't have to keep all these moving parts in my brain or trying to write it down all in my bullet journal. but I am still using my bullet journal. This is not going away. This is more like a supplement, like, because I still write things in my bullet journal, like ideas or things I need to remember, especially the deadline. I have that written in there because I need to be able to see it every day. Not that I'm not looking at my board every day, because I do, but it's something about writing it down that I have to do. But all of the little moving parts and things that I've written down in my bullet journal and that's scattered throughout my bullet journal, I can actually keep in one place now. So I'm using a tech tool as well as my bullet journal to get this in control and handled. Anyway, so that is what I'm going to do. Hopefully you found it entertaining or informative, or you learned something. If you did, definitely subscribe down below. You have to hit that bell in order to get notified when I upload a new video. So yeah, you know the deal. All right, friends, till next time.